Billie Eilish wrote the song, What Was I Made For the 2023 Barbie movie. You know, when the Barbie movie came out, I started to see trailers for it, and I was like, I'm never going to that. It just looked silly, and it just looked dumb. And then an amazing young woman, one of our young adults here at North Point, said, hey, Jen, you're a boy mom, so I know no one's going to invite you to the Barbie movie. And I went to go see it with my mom, and I think you would love it. Do you want to go see it? And I couldn't turn down such a sweet invitation. And I went, and I loved it. I actually really loved the movie. And the movie got a lot of criticism, and I actually think the criticism was fair. It just wasn't how I experienced the movie, because for me, every character in that movie was in the throes of an identity crisis. They had never actually stopped to ask, how was I made? What was I made for? And that actually worked really well for them until it didn't. And then the plot kind of unfolds from there, creating this tension of when you actually ask yourself, how am I made? What am I made for? Things start to happen. We're in part 2 of our series, Getting to Know You. We're just taking 3 weeks to take a look at what it means to get to know the you that's like with a capital Y as in God, to get to know you as in yourself. And then next week, we're going to look at what it means to really fully know others. Because we do genuinely believe that when you know God deeply and you discover yourself truly, it will actually enable you to love others fully. And we think that that's how your world will change and actually just the world all around us. Now, last week, Buck did a great job of just challenging us to consider, you may know a lot about God, but do you actually know God? And he gave us 2 simple things we can do to know God better. And I say simple as if being still or surrendering are actually simple things. But this week, I just want to look at what it looks like for you to know you. For you to know how you are shaped, for you to know how you are woven together, how you are knit, for you to know you well. I actually think we can learn a lot about each other or know a lot about ourselves just by looking at the pictures that we take. Now, let me explain this for a second. If you decide to point your camera to something, to pause long enough to capture it, it says something about you. Last month, my husband and I celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary. And thank you. It's been hard on me. It's been a breeze for him, but it's been so difficult. And so we took a trip that it's taken us 25 years to save up for. We went to Italy. And yeah, it's that 25 years. So, and I think, though, what's funny is if you look at our pictures from the trip, like if you took each of our phones, you would think we were at 2 different places, and we took 2 different kinds of trips. So my husband is an accountant by trade, and so any stereotype that generates is accurate. You're good. But there's also this part of him that's like artsy-ish, nature-ish, and he just loves to take pictures of like landscapes. These are some of the pictures he took from Italy. Yeah. Okay, now, I need an equal expression when I show you my pictures. He's just like, see, he loves to play with perspective. He loves to capture things. I mean, like, so this was his trip. These were my pictures. I wanted the wow. Where was the wow factor? Like, that is art, people. You know, our differences have created a lot of tension in our marriage. But what if that's actually part of the point? What if the things that make us different are actually the things that God has woven or shaped in our lives as individuals that actually make us who we're supposed to be? See, I think you need to know you. I think you need to know as much as you can possibly know about how you were knit together. I think it's super important. I think it informs it's already actually happening. Now, I know that when you hear someone talk about personality, it's immediately going to conjure up like a spectrum of feelings, right? So some people, you've taken every personality assessment test known to man. You take every quiz you can. And others, if I just say the word Enneagram, your eyes are going to roll back in your head and you're like, please do not talk about that. And that's a spectrum, and I totally get it, because here's the deal. We have, on this side, we have people that take every test, read every book, listen to every podcast about self-discovery that they can. And then they use those things as sometimes as rationalization or as a label or as a badge. Like, I can't help it, I'm an Enneagram 3. Or I'm a visual learner, so I don't read a book. Or this is how I relate to God, so everybody should relate to God. That we take these things that we learn about ourselves and we almost use them not as a tool to actually discover more about ourselves, but as a way to rationalize our choices and behavior, all the way to the other side, which is, oh my gosh, she's going to talk about self-assessment and like personality profiles. I am out already. I don't need to do any of that. Do not label me. I don't want to be put in a box. But you're in a box. You are you. And everybody knows the box you're in. So I understand both ends of the spectrum. But you need to know you. Because you are everywhere you go. And everybody else already recognizes the thing that you are struggling with. And there may be responses and things that you have that you don't even recognize anymore. They've just become how you are. And you may not even like some of them, but you just need to know them so that you can decide what you and God want to do with those things. Now, when Sal and I went to Italy, we decided that the way we were going to plan this trip is we were going to go to all these different cities, and each of us was going to pick one thing to do in each city. So on our route was Florence. I had zero desire to go to Florence, but Sal wanted to go, and he wanted to do a day trip to Tuscany. He's the cooler one of the two of us. And so I was like, well, I don't know now. I don't even want to go to Florence, but it makes sense, so we'll go. And so I just started to Google, like, what do you do in Florence? Top 10 things to do in Florence. What am I going to see in Florence? And every list had, you need to tour the Uffizi Gallery and the Accademia to see Michelangelo's David. I was like, okay. I tried to avoid it because I was like, I've seen the statue in pictures. It probably doesn't look any different. But I was like, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. By the way, Florence ended up being my favorite city out of all the cities that we visited. But so we go to Florence, and when you go, you start your tour at the Accademia, which is a museum of sorts as well as an art school, and you learn about the history. You learn about artists that got their beginnings there. So think like Botticelli or Michelangelo or Da Vinci, if you're thinking Ninja Turtles. Like it just keeps going like that, right? And so Michelangelo shows up at 14 years old at the Accademia. Now, the Accademia is attached to a monastery, and the reason that it is because the church back then supplied everything they needed to learn and perfect their craft, with one condition. They had to sculpt and paint stories and scenes from the Bible, because the culture at that time was largely illiterate. So the priest would pay for all the supplies, the priest would pay for masters to come in and teach, but they had to sculpt and paint and depict scenes from the Bible so that they could use that, the monks and the priests could use that then to teach the public. So Michelangelo shows up at 14, starts to learn under some of the great masters, and at age 26, he sculpts the David. And if you've ever seen it, if you get the chance, you should go see it. Don't be like me and try and skip Florence. Go to Florence and see the David. But it's perfect. The way that he studied. Now, David was originally intended to actually be a statue on top of a church. That's why a boy that's told in stories is 12 years old, looks like a grown man. But he's supposed to be up on top of a church. He never actually made it up there for various reasons. He's also sculpted after from a big piece of marble that was rejected by multiple artists. They were like, no, it had been struck by lightning, so that artist rejected it. It has been out too long, that artist rejected. But Michelangelo says, well, I'll see what I can do. Because if you chip marble wrong, the whole piece is done. So he chisels this sculpture. Now, if you're familiar with this massively famous statue, you may have been familiar with the story of it, or maybe familiar with what supposedly Michelangelo said about sculpting the David. Let's look. Supposedly he goes, the sculpture is already complete within the marble block. Before I even start my work, it's already there. I just have to chisel away the superfluous material. The David's already in the block. I just have to get rid of everything else to reveal what was already there. You are already you. You know, it's funny, after service, I had someone approach me after first service, and they said, you know, I hear what you're saying, Jim, but I think I can change every day. You are not a statue. You do shape and take form over time. And you can change at any point, but there are things, I think, and we're going to see if our psalmist backs me up here in a second, that I think are just core to you. There are things that are just you. And I say this as someone who warred against myself for a long time. I tried to eliminate parts of myself for so long, but there are things that are just Jen. There are things that are just you. You're already you. Now, I want to spend some time, the rest of our time, just navigating one psalm this morning to have this conversation. It's Psalm 139. Now, Psalms is just a collection of songs and poems found at the end of the Old Testament. And this is one of my favorite. There's probably going to be bits and pieces of it that are familiar to you. But I think that the psalmist, I think there's a part of us that wants to be known. And I think the psalmist talks about what that actually looks like to have a conversation about being known. So let's jump in. The psalmist goes, you speaking to God, you have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You're familiar with everything about me. Before a word is on my tongue, you already know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Now, the depth of knowing that the psalmist is speaking of, I think it's hard for us to grasp. I have some friends that could probably finish my sentences. Some of you could probably tell me things about Sal, right? Like, have you already know my husband already? Like, I think that maybe my boys would tell you, they can tell you exactly what I'm thinking by the way that my face looks. And my husband would tell you the depth of my sighing will absolutely reveal the depth of my frustration and irritation. But we're talking about being known at even a deeper level than that. This is more. This is a depth that only one could actually grasp with you. You know, there's a story that happened several thousand years later after the psalmist writes this that I think reflects. It's this moment with Jesus that we find in the Gospel of John, and he has encountered this woman at a well in the middle of the day. In theory, she has gone to the well in the heat of the day to avoid actually running into the villagers, and Jesus has this conversation with her. And in this conversation, he tells her who he is, and he tells her what he knows about her. And then the disciples show up, as always, confused by what Jesus is doing and saying. And it's the woman's reaction that really gets me every time. At the end of this story, here's what she does. She leaves her encounter with Jesus, goes back to the same village she's been avoiding all this time, and has conversations with the villagers. And it says this, John records this. Many Samaritans from that town believed in him, speaking of Jesus, because of the woman's testimony. And what was her testimony? What was her story? You guys have got to come and meet the person that told me everything I ever did. Come and see the man who could tell me everything I ever did. If I could find the person that knew everything you ever did, would you want me to meet them? How long would they be alive? If they knew everything you ever did. To shift from, I am so embarrassed, I'm going to go draw water in the heat of the day to avoid people, to I am now going to go tell people to come meet the person that knew everything about me, something must have happened. Because I think there's something in us that wants to know that someone knows everything we ever did and they still care. So let me rephrase the question. How would you feel if you met the person that knew everything? They know how you just lied, how you just manipulated that situation, how you were passive aggressive. They know the dark thoughts that you have. They know the way that you think about yourself, the way that you think about others. They know what you're doing too much of, and they know what you're doing too little of. Now, do you want everybody to come meet the person who knows everything you ever did? Some of us might be okay with someone knowing that, but it would be hard for us to say, hey, come meet this person, let him or her tell you everything I ever did. But I think there's also equally something inside us that wants to be free enough to just know that someone just knows. We want to be known. I have never sat on the other side of someone that said, man, I am really looking for like community or connection. I want a really great group of people that I cannot be myself with and I totally cannot trust. And I know will abandon me as soon as they get the real me. That's not what we long for. That's not what we crave. We crave this depth of knowing. And what if that depth of knowing already exists? What if there is one that knows all that about you? Knows the things that you think you've swept under the rug, knows the ways that you try and put on a face so that no one can know the thing, because if they knew it, then how would they value you? Or worse, if they knew it, how would they use it against you? But our psalmist says there is one that has searched you and has known you and is everywhere with you. And that's one of the implications. Let's keep looking at our Psalms. Where can I go from your spirit? If you know everything about me, where am I going to go? Where am I going to go? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go to the heavens, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths, you're there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. There's no escaping this kind of knowing. Well, my kids grew up in church, and in our church back in Tennessee, they were little, but there was this song in our children's ministry that they sang. It was called God is Watching, but for some reason, the people decided to set it to like the creepiest Halloween music possible. So I just want you to picture this with me for a moment. You're driving your minivan, and you look in the back, and your 4-year-old's going, God is watching over you every moment. My 4-year-old didn't look psycho like I just did, but like, it's creepy. You know, depending upon how you feel about God or how you were raised about God, the idea of God being in and through everything and knowing everything may not be appealing. But again, I just think if you step aside from that, there is that part of you that wants to be known that way. But I think we're afraid to be known that way because what if I'm too much for even God? What if the things I've done or the ways that I feel about myself or the things I can't quite pull together is even too much for God? It's already too much for people or not enough for people. What if it's too much for God? So when we don't know if we can trust that kind of being known, we do what the psalmist says he does. We hide. Let's look. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, I can like skip this part of myself, right? I can avoid knowing that God knows this. I can avoid knowing that other people know. I can just hide. I can put on face. I can keep it all together. I can just hide. And the light will become night around me. God won't see it. But the psalmist continues, but even the darkness isn't dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. I so get why we hide. But we are known. And God is not afraid of your darkness. God is not afraid of that thing that terrifies you. God is not afraid of that secret. I don't even know that God understands darkness the way that we think about darkness. And part of the reason that God is not afraid of your darkness is because God knew it was there all along. God is the one that formed you, that fashioned you together, that knit you. He is not unaware of the ways that you struggle, the ways that your thoughts spiral, the ways that you mask your insecurities. These are not unfamiliar to him because he knit you together from the very beginning. Our psalmist says, for you fashioned my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. Now, that word knit could also easily be translated woven, shaped, formed. But I liked the word knit, so when I started to read this psalm and just to kind of sit with it, I decided I was going to go learn to knit. I thought, that sounds good. And so I did what everybody should do when you're trying to learn a new hobby. I went to Hobby Lobby to buy all the supplies. So my adventure into knitting started in Hobby Lobby and ended in Hobby Lobby because I went to Hobby Lobby and I went to the knitting section and I was like, this is too much. This is a lot. Lots of needle options, lots of pattern options, and I'm not even going to get started with yarn. So I never learned to knit. I told first service this, but then afterwards someone still approached me. If you're a knitter right now and you're hearing this, you're like, oh no, Jen, you would love to knit. That's okay. I don't need to learn to knit. You don't have to invite me to learn to knit. It seemed massively complex. But you are massively complex. You are a complex being. You are knit together and shaped by your experiences, by the culture around you, by your genetics, by the way that you were raised. You are complex. However, even the most intricate of knitting can be studied and known and observed. There are things that you can see about you. And in fact, I think if we sat together, it wouldn't take us long to find a little bit of how you're knit together. It probably wouldn't take us long to find the things that get you fired up. It probably wouldn't take us long to find the things that's like followed you from job to job to job to job, or the arguments that you get in over and over and over again. And if we sat and spent some time, and if you and I couldn't find it, I bet I could find some family and friends that could help us find it. But I bet you people who've spent any kind of level of consistent time with you could go, oh, that's just so-and-so. There are things about me that I have fought my entire life. I have, my personality could be described, trying to choose words wisely here. My personality can be described as a never good enough person. Like nothing is ever good enough, ever. And I have this thing where I have to like do it right, and I have to make sure you do it right too. And so I find myself in these constant patterns of frustrations with people or certain relationship dynamics, or the same things pop up for me everywhere I work. And so I would try and stop thinking that way. I'd be like, just stop. Jen, stop thinking that. Stop saying that. Stop reacting that way. And the more I tried to stop my behavior, the worse it would get. Until I actually stopped and invited God in to show me not so much like behavior modification, but more my motivators. So I think a lot of us spend a lot of our life trying to eliminate certain behaviors from us rather than understand why you do what you do. There is a reason that you see the world the way you see it. There is a reason that you have been fashioned the way that you have. There is a reason that argument pops up time and time again, and that request has been made of you by your spouse time and time again. And you just keep revisiting it over and over because oftentimes we're trying to war against our behaviors rather than stop and learn about what's motivating us. If you've ever found yourself saying, why am I like this? Why can't I just? Why do I always? God, why did you? These are normal questions. But if you ask those questions and you don't stop and take time with the one that knit you together to learn the answer, you will spend your life chasing your behaviors, never understanding your motivators. The psalmist understood there's a reason that you're made how you are. Let's continue. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. See, when I spent most of my time trying to get rid of certain behaviors, I realized man, if I understood my motivators, it actually changes. I don't stop being me. God is not trying to get you to not be you, but he's trying to get you to understand that there are parts of you that have been made in you, like it's been woven, it's a part of you, but it's not all good and it's not all bad. So that whole part of my personality where it's never good enough, there's some beautiful things that come with that. Honestly, it's been rewarded. Like my obedience and my drive to make things better is great. And some people are very, very happy about that. And so life has rewarded that, but there are also some very fearful things that happen with that personality. The Hebrew word in the psalm, fearfully and wonderfully made, the fearfully part, it literally means to be afraid. How that plays out in my life is that's great when you're a perfectionist, but when your desire for other people to be perfect overshadows hope and faith and belief and grace, or I should be very afraid when the reality is my children will think nothing is ever good enough. But my heart cries for encouragement for them. There are things that are just a part of me. If I try and stop being all about fairness and justice and doing things the right way, it won't work. It's part of who I am. And it can be a gift. It can also be a curse. But when I submit it to God, instead of trying to cut off half of myself, if I start saying, okay, God, this is kind of how you made me. I kind of keep coming back to this over and over again. What do you want to do with it? And the lens through which I operate, I didn't ask for. I didn't ask to be the way that I am. I didn't ask to be shaped and woven the way that I am. It came through a series of experiences, my whole development. I mean, the reality is we are shaped. There's no one that's going to step into adulthood that doesn't have some kind of wound. Now, I know for some of us, we're like, oh, I don't want to hear about the childhood wounds. I understand. You've been shaped, though, by them. You've been shaped by them. Guess what? Your parents were shaped by them, and your kids will be shaped by them. So wouldn't you want to know? Wouldn't you want to understand them? Wouldn't you want to see how they've impacted you? I remember being in a thought spiral, and because I was just on a default reaction, I was just about to respond to someone a specific way that I always responded, and I felt like God was like, you could do something different this time. You don't have to always react in anger and judgment. There are other options for you. That's not all that I've woven into you. You need to know you because you is everywhere you go. One of Richard Rohr, an author and a speaker, phrases it this way. He says, if we don't learn to transform our pain, we will most assuredly transmit it, and most likely to those closest to us. I'm not trying to dilute the reality of what we've experienced and what has shaped us. Trauma was probably very, very real. In fact, the pain was probably very, very real, and the blame is potentially very, very real. But it is yours now. It is your story now. And we have to decide what we will do with those things, how we will allow it to shape us, and if we will invite God into it or not. Ignoring it, sweeping it under the rug, acting like it doesn't matter, that nothing you experienced growing up is impacting your marriage today, isn't effective. Ask your spouse. But acting like it's everything and it's the only identity or label that we have is also equally not effective. You can choose different. And the psalmist, I love that the way he balances it. He says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I think he emphasizes that wonderful for a reason, because I think most of us can't believe that part. You are not all bad. You have great things in you. In fact, you've got some things that are so uniquely wired to you. You're the only person that can give that gift to the world. You're the only person that can show up that way for your kids. You're the only person that can show up that way at work. You are the only one that can be you, and there are good things in there for you to do. There are gifts to be given. Yes, there is a fearful side. You need to know yourself well enough. It's not about asking God, do I do this or that? It's about saying, God, here's all of me. What do I do now? And the psalmist, I love that he adds, he said, because he could have said your works are wonderful, I know that-ish. Or your works are wonderful, and I kind of know that. But he goes, your works are wonderful, I know that full well. Do you know yourself full well? Are you honest enough with yourself? Do you know yourself full well? So how do we do that? Okay, so I want to give some application points, just some things. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but just 4 things I want to highlight. And I picked some things I think that are across a spectrum of investment, whether they take a little bit of time or money. But the first one is this. It's just the best and worst question ever. It doesn't cost you anything. You can go do this today. You can start doing it tomorrow. But find someone, sit across on the other side from them and say, hey, what's it like on the other side of me? How do I really show up at work? What's it really like to work for me? What's it really like to work with me? What's it like to be my kid? How do I show up as a mom? What's it like on the other side of me? I had a friend many, many years ago, and because I was operating on this autopilot and wasn't really learning much about myself, we had a disagreement, and I went on to autopilot of what I usually do. But I was like, no, I really want to be friends with this person. She means a lot to me. So I took her to coffee, and I was like, hey, I don't know if you've noticed, I've been a little frustrated with you. And she just laughed, and she goes, no, I knew. She goes, because I was on your blacklist. I said, what? She goes, no, everybody knows that when you are hurt or frustrated with someone, you put them on a blacklist and you avoid them. I knew that, but no one else was supposed to be aware of that. That's what it's like when you don't stop. Because here's what happens now is I still get equally as frustrated. But every time I want to pull away from a friendship, I hear her voice. I hear her go, yep, and I have a choice. Have you sat on the other side of someone to ask them how you're really coming across and given them the space to answer without you butting in? Really, do you know how it feels to be on the other side of you? When you look at people the way you look at them, when you talk to them with that tone that you use, have you ever asked? Because God is with you in all those moments. He's well aware. The other thing might take a little more investment. It's just read a good book. These are some of my absolute favorites. These books have literally transformed the way that I view myself, my relationship with God. Some of them have transformed my parenting, even down to the way that I eat. There's so much self-discovery to do. I couldn't provide an exhaustive list. There is not a shortage of things that you can read or podcasts you can listen to that will help you see yourself better. Will help you learn to be a better leader at work. It will help you learn to be a better friend, to engage at home better. Just pick something and start down that road. The other one does require, the third idea is it does require a lot more money sometimes, as well as more time, is just get on the other side of someone who is a professional at helping you see you. I'm in counseling. And I am so thankful that my parents put me in counseling way, way early in life. They did that because I was not the easiest person to deal with. But what it did for me is normalize being on the other side of someone. The sole purpose in that moment is to help me see me for real. with no mask, just the ability to go, hey, this is how that looks. This is how that's coming across in that relationship, that has the tools and the techniques to help me see myself more clearly. Now, I know that counseling is expensive. I understand that. I also know that finding the right counselor is important, and that can feel like it takes forever. It's kind of like dating. But I think in certain seasons of my life, I couldn't have afforded not to do that. We often refer people here to the Center for Relational Care, but if you go to npaustin.com/counseling, you can find all of our resources there. What does it look like for you to actually get intentional about knowing yourself well? Now, the last one I want to share, it's almost the same way as the psalmist starts to wrap up. So let's go back to our psalm. How precious are your thoughts about me, O God? They cannot be numbered. I can't even count them. They outnumber the grains of sand, and when I wake up, you are still with me. How precious to you are God's thoughts about how you're showing up? When was the last time you even asked, God, how am I showing up in that friendship? God, what is actually happening at home? What is your go-to source for clarity about yourself? How do you get in front of a mirror and get clarity about how you're actually coming across? Several months ago, our service programming and communications director, Josh Montoya, led our staff through an exercise. Now, he will tell you, he'll be the first to tell you, he is not the originator of this exercise, but because he did it, he took me through it the first time, he is now my originator of this exercise. But I thought maybe I would just show you this morning what Josh showed me several months ago, because now I practice this pretty consistently, almost weekly. You can do it with me, so if you want to. If not, just hang in there. And Josh had us sit down, and he had us get still for a minute. He had us close our eyes. Now, typically when someone tells me to close my eyes and go to my happy place or picture something, I just can't because I giggle. Or my mind wanders to my to-do list. But this time I was able to do it. You can do this with me. And close your eyes. And you would have to just take a breath. And he said, just picture yourself sitting in a chair. Now, for me, my chair is like one of those oversized chairs with kind of the large armrests, like the big, comfy, cozy chairs. And he said, you're sitting there, and across from you is a mirror. And you're looking in the mirror, and you're looking at yourself. How do you feel about what you see? What are the first thoughts that come to mind? Maybe you're just looking at you, or maybe you're picturing something that happened just this morning. Maybe you're picturing something that you're dreading with the work week ahead. Are you proud of what you see? Do you struggle with what you see? That really isn't the point, but you're looking at you. And then Jesus comes and either pulls up a chair alongside you, or for me, he just kind of leans on that armrest right by me. And he starts to look in the mirror. What does he see? You look at his face and you can tell the reaction he has to what he sees. Maybe he says something directly to you. Maybe it's just you stare at that scene together for a while. But you start to shift from how you see it to how you think Jesus would actually see it. And then you get up from your imaginative chair. And you open your eyes. I did this last week. And last week for me was a crazy work week. I know you think people work at a church, it's always great. It is great, but it's also crazy. And I have adult children, which I thought when they left, I would stop worrying, and that oddly didn't happen. And so I just worry about bigger things now. And so I did this last week, and I just sat and I got still. Jesus and I do this often enough where I've grown accustomed to how he looks at me, which is usually like this. But I'm actually totally okay with this look from Jesus because it means he gets me. And he smiles, and he usually is like, oh my God, you just forgot I was with you again. You're acting like you're all alone. Acting like you got to carry all this all by yourself. Like you got to figure it all out and fix everything all on your own. And he laughs, maybe rolls his eyes a little bit. And then I get up from that imaginative chair, and guess what? It's still crazy. And I still worry about my kids, but I do so in a very different way. Almost with like just a full understanding and with a level of clarity that I really can't get if I don't take the time to sit and do that. If you go to the Accademia in Florence, you'll go in through the tour, and what's going to happen is they're going to kind of spit you out into this hallway, and then right as you go down the hallway, you look in an atrium, and there's the David. It's hard to miss. And then you walk, but here's the thing. If you go too quickly and you rush to see the David, which is where the crowd is and everybody's going, if you rush to see the David, you will miss Michelangelo's other pieces of art that flank the hallway to go see the David. These pieces of art are called the Prisoners, and they are radically different pieces of art than the David. The David is perfect and polished and smooth and powerful, and the Prisoners, it's almost like he didn't finish them. They were commissioned by Pope Julius II. He wanted them to be at the Vatican with him and then to go with him to his graveside. But when these pieces of art were presented to Pope Julius, he said, I don't want them. He rejected them because Pope Julius was expecting a David. So supposedly when Michelangelo was asked, like, how do you sculpt that? And then you go into this where it's like they're not even done and they're not perfect and they're still in the stone. Stone is still on pieces of their body. And Michelangelo supposedly responded with, well, this is how I sculpt now. And art historians theorize as to why. They say that these pieces were done during Michelangelo's more spiritual years. But supposedly he said, when I sculpted the David, I was bringing out perfection. But now what I want to do is create pieces where people can see the struggle for these figures to get out of the rock, and they can envision what freedom looks like for those pieces. See, I can't make you want to know more about yourself. You can just keep going through life blindly, saying that you're not in a box all the while being in it. The psalmist can't make you want to know yourself full well, even though he can remind you that you've already been searched. You've already been woven. You are already fully known. You have to want that. And it does take some work. And it's not always easy work. But there are things we can do. We can ask good questions. Ask what it's like to be on the other side of you so you can see yourself. Grab a good book. Maybe start a journey toward counseling. Or even if just every morning, before your day begins, you take a seat and look in the mirror and invite God to show you how he sees you, as opposed to just operating on autopilot, not even knowing yourself. It's hard work, but I think it's worth it. Let me pray for us. Father, I thank you that you have searched us and you know us full well. Lord, you know the areas in which we hide, but there is nothing hidden from you. There is no amount of darkness we think that we live in that you are not shining light into. God, there are so many reasons. Some of them are excuses. Some of them are realities that we are afraid to see ourselves clearly and fully. So I just pray for each person in this room this morning that whatever that looks like for them to take, just to know themselves a little more, but to do that alongside you. That it's not about eliminating part of what you've already knit together, but understanding how you have shaped us and how you've taken our experiences and molded them into something. Help us to see clearly. Help us to allow you to sculpt whatever you need in our lives. Thank you. Amen. All right, guys, see you next week for part 3.